In 1968, at the age of 47, Suharto became the second president of the Republic of Indonesia. In the next 6 episodes, I will be looking at Suharto's terms in 5 years. So the first episode will be 68 to 73. Prior to discussing each of the episodes, I'll just give a small chronology on the year's major events. So in 1968, Suharto becomes president. In 1969, a plebiscite is with the United Nations backing held in Papua. This is a very controversial year for Papua, but 2,000 of, I think, the population of 700,000 or 800,000 vote to join the Republic of Indonesia. A year later, Suharto goes on an anti-corruption, which is very ironic, but this is what governments often do. They'll say the things as if they're going to fight it, that actually they're more involved than any other. Anyway, we live and learn. The first elections were held in 71, and the two parties, PDI and PPP, were formed in 72. These two parties, along with Golkar, which was the official Suharto party, would contest the next 6 elections, of which Golkar would always win. But we've got a bit more to discuss than that. Okay, so next I'm going to discuss Suharto and what he was doing during these 5 years. The priorities for Suharto in the first 5 years were first political. He had to stabilize his base. And how to do that? Well, first he kept a very strong anti-communism stance. He would keep that stance for pretty much 20 years. The Chinese specifically were not allowed to keep their Chinese names, and any Chinese words in their houses, etc., were forbidden. You weren't allowed to speak or use Mandarin. The second, obviously very crucial area was the economy. The economy was shot when Suharto took over in 68, and inflation was a big problem. So what to do? He looked to, first of all, his allies. He's not a communist country. The West wants to help. And the West helped. But even more crucially, he could look to the United Nations, which at the time wasn't an anti-Western group. It was pretty much what it said on the tin. So the UNDP or the World Bank would come in, or I don't think there was IMF at the time, and they'd bring money into the country. With that money, they'd help with finances, they'd help bring Indonesians to America and other countries to get the education those Indonesians need to become the Minister of Finance, the Minister of whatever. So a lot of effort was put into Indonesia, especially in the first 5 years, to help them work on the economy. Okay, now, of course, neighbors were a problem. Malaysia and Indonesia had never really gotten on. But under Suharto, by I think 70, the relationship strengthened. And because it did, Indonesia took a far more leading role in ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's quite an important trade bloc now. In the early days, it didn't have a lot of sway, but it's become quite valuable to the ASEAN group. In fact, I can travel to any country within ASEAN without a visa. So it's a visa-free, trade-free zone on the whole. So these areas helped compared to Sukarno's anti-Western stance. The third part of the puzzle was to bring the military and the police together. Suharto couldn't afford a coup, so he formed ABRI. ABRI was the military, armed forces, army, navy, air force, and the police. An interesting fact, you, as an officer, when you entered, did not choose whether you went into the army or the navy. No, that was done for you after the exams. I don't know whether it was a money thing or not. The bottom line is, though, pretty much anybody joining ABRI in the 60s and 70s wanted to join the army. However, interestingly, this has changed, and I would always recommend for Indonesians, and that's not disregarding the others, I'd always recommend them to join the police now. That's just me. Finally, agriculture, self-sufficiency in rice was crucial for Suharto not to have riots, not to have disruption from people. So a lot of effort was put into rice growing and agriculture. Indonesia ironically followed, like China and Russia, 5-year plans, which it called repelitas. But on the whole, things began to become successful, and the production of rice started at first slowly, but gradually to increase, and agriculture on the whole became a better standard for both the farmers and for the food itself. So these were the areas Suharto, on the whole, successfully maneuvered through his first 5 years. The next 5 years would be quite tumultuous, though, and we'll discuss those next time. I hope you're enjoying the series, and see you next time. Bye.